Today's story took place in July 2004 in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it shows that sometimes the person closest to us, someone we've known for years, may turn out to be someone entirely different. Lori K. Suarez Hacking was born on December 31st, 1976. Adopted as an infant by Thelma and Geraldo Suarez, Lori was welcomed into a loving, faith-oriented home. The Suarez family had ties to both California and Brazil. Geraldo, originally from Piracicaba in Brazil, worked as a Spanish and Portuguese teacher at Sunny Hills High School in Fullerton, California. He had met Thelma years earlier while they were both serving as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Rio de Janeiro, a shared faith that remained central to their lives. Thelma and Geraldo Suarez had 2 children. Although Lori's early childhood was spent in California, her life changed dramatically in 1987 when her parents divorced. At the time, Lori was 12 and her brother was 20. It emerged that their father had taken up with a mistress, 30 years his junior, and she was pregnant. After over 2 decades of marriage, the Suarez relationship came to an end. The following year, Thelma and Lori moved to Orem, Utah, where Lori would spend her adolescence surrounded by a close-knit community, strong religious values, and the unwavering love of her mother. It was a difficult time for Lori. Her entire life had been uprooted, but she quickly adapted to the new surroundings. She was widely described as intelligent and capable. She did very well at school and was also popular among her peers. Despite living in a fairly conservative area, Lori was given a fair amount of freedom. For her 16th birthday, her father bought her a car so she could get to school more easily. Lori spent a lot of time with her friends. She also had a strong sense of financial responsibility and understood the value of work from an early age. As a teenager, she took a job at a car wash to earn her own money. Still, Lori sometimes felt she didn't quite fit in with the other young people around her. Many of the local families were traditional Mormon households with several children, whereas she lived with her divorced mother. Around the age of 15 or 16, Lori met the great love of her life, Mark Hacking. Mark was born on April 24, 1976, the same age as Lori. The two met in secondary school, and sparks flew during a school camping trip. The Hacking family was well liked and respected in the community. Mark's father, Douglas, was a pediatrician, and the family was financially well off. The Hackings had 7 children and were seen as model Mormons. Douglas worked hard to provide for the family, while his wife, Janet, took care of the home. Both parents were deeply committed to the upbringing and development of their children. In short, Mark came from a good family. At school, Mark was known for being charismatic and humorous. He was popular and genuinely liked by many. While Lori wasn't yet sure what path she wanted to take in life, Mark already had his mindset. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and become a doctor. His brothers also had similar ambitions. Mark felt the pressure to live up to his father and brother's accomplishments, and he often spoke about it. Some described Mark as charmingly clumsy, while others saw him as something of an attention seeker, always trying to be at the center of things. Lori and Mark didn't become a couple straight away. They were friends for a time, and even when they began dating, it wasn't very serious at first. At the age of 19, Mark chose to take part in a Mormon mission. Together with a friend, he was sent to Canada, where the goal was to preach their faith, help others, and attend church group meetings. But being away from home gave Mark a sense of freedom. Although he stayed in touch with Lori, and they were officially still together, he began seeing other women, even spending the night at one woman's house. In Mormonism, premarital chastity is taken very seriously, but it seemed Mark had forgotten that during his mission. Unfortunately for him, someone reported his behavior, and Mark was sent home in disgrace. Back in Utah, questions from friends and family followed. Mark made up a story to cover his tracks and soon rekindled his relationship with Lori, this time more seriously. By then, Lori was studying at Weber State University, having received a scholarship. She pursued a degree related to business and politics, and was known for being highly ambitious. Laurie didn't live the typical student life. She avoided parties and focused on her studies. She did, however, spend a lot of time with her female friends. One of her dorm mates later said that Laurie had a strong personality. Though she was doing well at university, Laurie missed home terribly. From the beginning, she had wanted to attend the University of Utah, but she had been awarded a scholarship elsewhere. Higher education in the United States is notoriously expensive, and for many, a scholarship is the only way to make it feasible. Laurie spent a year at Weber, dedicating herself to her studies with the goal of transferring to the University of Utah, and she succeeded. After the move, her relationship with Mark became much more serious. He also began attending the University of Utah. The couple seemed perfect for one another. Mark enrolled in a pre-medical program. Laurie was such a dedicated student that, in 1997 to 1998, she received the University President's Award for Academic Achievement. Mark would visit her on campus each day so they could have lunch together. Her friends recalled that the two got along extremely well and that Mark went out of his way to be a loving partner. He often brought her flowers and paid her compliments. Everyone was certain that Laurie and Mark would one day get married and start a family. Soon, Laurie and Mark's relationship was about to move to the next stage. Mark proposed, and the couple began planning their wedding. Both families seemed thrilled with their children's choices. Laurie's father even said that he liked his future son-in-law 110%. The wedding took place on the 7th of August 1999, shortly after Laurie had completed her university degree. Not long afterwards, she found a job at a bank. Mark, meanwhile, finished his pre-medical studies at the University of Utah. The couple wanted to start a family, but first they were focused on securing financial stability. While Laurie quickly secured a good job, her husband struggled. Hospitals didn't have roles that matched his expectations, and the couple faced financial difficulties during their early years of marriage. Eventually, Mark found a job at a hospital, working as a medical assistant on the pediatric ward. His colleagues recalled that he was excellent with children, funny, engaging, and a calming presence on the ward. He was well liked by everyone. Despite everything, Mark still dreamed of becoming a fully qualified doctor like his father and brothers. But medical school required both time and money, something the couple didn't have much of. They moved to Salt Lake City, where the cost of living was still a challenge. Although they were both working, their salaries weren't high enough for Mark to afford further study. Still, their friends described them as a united couple with the same vision for the future. They quickly became part of the Mormon community in their new city and made new friends. By 2003, the Hackings were thinking about having a baby. Laurie continued working at the bank, and her salary was sufficient to support the household. Mark, meanwhile, found a new job in a hospital working as a psychiatric aide. While he often introduced himself to others as a therapist, in truth, he wasn't qualified to be one. His role was more of a care assistant, helping to support patients, rather than providing therapy. Still, Mark hadn't given up on becoming a doctor. He continued saving and searched for a medical school that would allow him to balance study with work and family life. Eventually, he set his sights on the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Laurie, ever supportive, was fully behind him. She told him that if he were accepted, she would be happy to move with him to North Carolina for the duration of his studies. Laurie was a devoted wife who often praised her husband in front of others for helping her around the house and for his cooking. In 2004, Mark applied to UNC's medical school and soon received a positive response. He had been accepted. Laurie was immensely proud of him, and the couple informed their families about the upcoming move. Finally, it seemed, Mark was going to follow in the footsteps of his father and brothers and become a doctor. Their families were thrilled and supported them wholeheartedly. In July 2004, the couple handed in their notices at work and terminated the lease on their flat. It was a stressful time. With only a month left until the move, they had no savings and no clear plan for where they would live once in North Carolina. And then, their lives took another dramatic turn. Laurie discovered she was pregnant. It was the moment she had been dreaming of. Laurie had always wanted a large, loving family, but the timing wasn't ideal. Still, the couple believed things would work out. As it happened, fortune seemed to be on their side. One day, Mark came home beaming with excitement. He had managed to secure student financial aid and would now be eligible to rent university accommodation. Rent on campus would be far cheaper than in the city, and for the first time in a while, things began to fall into place. By the summer of 2004, the Hackings were about to begin a new chapter. Mark was on his way to becoming a doctor, and Laurie was going to be a mother. Their dreams were finally starting to come true. Friends and family noted how excited Laurie was, but also observed that Mark had become unusually withdrawn, quite out of character for him. Then again, they were going through massive life changes, and people react differently to stress. Sadly, on the morning of the 19th of July 2004, everything changed. At exactly 10:49 a.m., Mark Hacking made a 911 call to report his wife missing. He told the dispatcher that earlier that morning, at around 6 a.m., Laurie had gone for a jog before work, something she did regularly. But that day, she didn't come home. What's more, she never arrived at work either. Although Laurie was on notice and due to leave her job soon, she was still officially employed and was known for her punctuality and sense of responsibility. She would never simply fail to show up without informing someone. Mark explained that he'd gone out looking for her as soon as she was late returning home. He drove to the places she normally ran, but there was no sign of her. He admitted he may not have reported her missing so quickly were it not for the fact that she was pregnant. Mark was genuinely concerned. What if she had fainted, fallen, or needed urgent help? Even though very little time had passed, the police took the report seriously. It was possible that Laurie had suffered a medical emergency. Search teams were immediately dispatched to areas where she was known to run. Investigators divided up their efforts. One group searched parks and trails and asked bystanders if they had seen Laurie that morning, while another team focused on the husband. This was standard procedure in missing persons cases, though from the outside, the Hackings' marriage looked happy and solid. Throughout the day, Mark repeatedly blamed himself for not joining Laurie on her morning jog. He said she'd invited him to run with her, as they sometimes did together, but he'd declined because he had planned to go cycling that evening. Laurie had no issue with that and went running on her own. At one of the parks where Laurie often jogged, police discovered her parked car. It was among other vehicles, but something about it was odd. The car was unlocked, and the keys were missing. This could mean Laurie had simply taken the keys with her and forgotten to lock up, or perhaps she never locked her car at all. There were no personal belongings left inside, which in itself wasn't alarming. But one detail raised eyebrows. The driver's seat was pushed all the way back. Laurie was a petite woman, so far back, in fact, that she wouldn't have been able to reach the pedals. Then again, some people do adjust their seats when getting in or out of the car, simply for comfort. Still, that single detail would later become much more significant. Investigators began questioning people in the park, and one woman even claimed to have seen someone resembling Laurie. It was a promising lead. Unfortunately, it turned out to be false. Despite hours of searching, no trace of Laurie was found in the area. That very same day, a special search team was formed to locate the missing woman. The entire park had to be combed through. The case quickly drew media attention. A worried Mark appeared at a press conference, thanking the public for their support and pleading for any information regarding his wife. Efforts to find Laurie continued, and more witnesses were questioned. As is often the case, the husband became a person of interest early on. Although investigators were still exploring all possibilities, they couldn't rule out the chance that Laurie had been harmed by someone else. Two main theories emerged. The first was that Laurie had gone for a run and crossed paths with someone with malicious intentions. The second was that her husband had something to do with her disappearance. Both seemed plausible. Parks in the United States can be vast, with plenty of opportunities to get lost or to hide a body. No witnesses to an abduction were found, but investigators learned that 3 people had gone missing in the area in recent months. The situation was growing more concerning, and police had to examine every possibility. Meanwhile, the couple's friends and family described them as the perfect pair. Mark appeared genuinely distraught and fully engaged in the search efforts. Another theory began to circulate. Perhaps Laurie had chosen to walk away, from her husband, from her family, and from the Mormon community. But that idea didn't hold much weight. None of her belongings had been taken from the home, and her loved ones were adamant that she adored Mark and had been thrilled about the baby and their upcoming move. Her recent conversations had all been about the new chapter ahead. There was no indication she'd met someone else or planned to disappear. Police decided to search the couple's apartment. Mark let them in without hesitation and answered all of their questions. The flat was spotless, almost too spotless. The bathroom smelled strongly of cleaning products, as if it had just been scrubbed. Investigators also found packaging for a new mattress and bedding. Naturally, they asked Mark about it. He explained that Laurie had recently stained the mattress due to her period, so he had replaced it. It was a strange detail, considering Laurie was pregnant, but not impossible. Some women do experience bleeding in early pregnancy. Still, the explanation raised red flags. Detectives dug deeper into Mark's story. They checked his phone records and bank statements. It turned out that at 10:23 a.m. on the 19th of July, the same morning Laurie vanished, Mark had been at a shop purchasing a new mattress. This seemed suspicious. He had claimed he began looking for Laurie as soon as she failed to return home, yet just 25 minutes before calling 911, he was shopping for bedding. Curiously, he had made no mention of this in his statement.
I got up at 8, did some things. I played my Nintendo a bit, and we needed a new mattress. We decided to get one, so I went. And we had been shopping around, looking at different places, and I had found one.
What time was that?
I left my place at about 9. Drove around. Most of the places were closed where I was looking, but one place said on the door that they would open at 10, but I got there.
What place was that, you know?
I can't remember the name, but it's right next to R.C. Willey.
Okay.
Police, however, found their work interrupted. On the 20th of July, Mark was hospitalized after being found running naked down the street wearing only flip-flops. A concerned citizen had called emergency services, and Mark was taken to a psychiatric hospital. He claimed he was going through an emotional breakdown because of Laurie's disappearance and simply couldn't cope. Authorities weren't convinced. It seemed like Mark might be trying to deflect attention. The following day, a friend of Laurie's came forward with critical information. She told police that on July 15th, just days before she went missing, Laurie had taken a phone call at work from the University of North Carolina. She had contacted the university to ask about a student loan. It wasn't clear what was said during the conversation, but afterwards, Laurie had tears in her eyes and abruptly left work. Her friend suspected that Mark had never been accepted into medical school and had lied to Laurie. Investigators decided to look into it. What they discovered was shocking. Not only had Mark not been accepted into the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, he had never even applied. Worse still, he had never completed his undergraduate degree in Utah. In fact, he hadn't finished any degree at all, making it impossible for him to apply to medical school. The revelation stunned everyone. Mark had told his wife, family and friends that he'd graduated in 1999, the same year as Laurie. He never received a diploma, but no one found that odd. He had claimed he was too ill to attend the graduation ceremony and would collect it later. Everyone believed him. He even used to visit Laurie on campus with a backpack full of textbooks, pretending to study. Her mother recalled how he would complain about his physics exams and read essays aloud so she could help him correct the grammar. If Mark had never been accepted into medical school, then why were they planning to move to North Carolina? And where were they supposed to live, considering it wouldn't have been in campus housing? It appeared that Laurie had discovered everything just 4 days before she went missing. The situation was growing increasingly serious, and communication with Mark remained difficult. Investigators decided to conduct another search of the couple's flat. Numerous items were collected as evidence, but none were disclosed to the public immediately. Red stains believed to be blood were found, splatter patterns were present in the Hacking's bedroom, and in a bedside drawer, officers discovered a hunting knife with Laurie's DNA on it. That could very well explain why her husband had been so keen to replace the mattress. The quantity of blood suggested an injury, but not necessarily a fatal one, and there was still no body. Nevertheless, officers feared that Laurie was no longer alive. They also found Laurie's car keys inside the flat, which pointed to a staged disappearance. It was now clear that Mark had driven to the park and returned with the keys, fabricating the story. The day after his hospitalization, Mark's father spoke publicly in his defense, claiming his son hadn't harmed Laurie and had only lied about university because of immense pressure. But detectives weren't swayed. They suspected that Mark was pretending to be emotionally unstable in an attempt to lay the groundwork for a future legal defense. His decision to hire a lawyer while still in hospital suggested he was thinking clearly and strategically. Police expanded the search to include nearby woods, rubbish dumps, and abandoned areas. They also decided to reconstruct the days leading up to Laurie's disappearance. It turned out that on Sunday, the 18th of July, the couple had visited friends for a small gathering. Everything had seemed normal, though Mark had been unusually quiet. That same evening, around 8 p.m., they were seen shopping at a local grocery store. After that, Laurie vanished. The next morning, Mark purchased a new mattress, then called emergency services. CCTV footage surfaced showing a man resembling Mark dragging a heavy item in a black rubbish bag and disposing of it in a bin near the hospital where he worked. After that, he went shopping for a mattress and made the emergency call. The next stage of the investigation focused on local landfills, and at one site, crucial evidence was recovered. Police found a stained mattress, believed to be the one Mark had discarded, and a handwritten letter from Laurie. In it, she told her husband that she was tired of his lies and wanted a divorce. In the Mormon community, divorce is considered a last resort. Mark would have known that, and he would also have known that the truth about his deception was about to come out. By this point, the couple's families had begun to accept that the truth might be horrific. One of Mark's brothers visited him in hospital and pleaded with him to reveal where Laurie's body was. The other brothers followed suit. Eventually, Mark decided to confess. He admitted to killing his wife with a rifle. He claimed it hadn't been premeditated, just a moment of rage that he deeply regretted. After the murder, he cleaned the apartment, placed Laurie's body in a rubbish bag, and left it in a bin behind his workplace. On the 2nd of August 2004, Mark Hacking was arrested. For weeks, police searched for Laurie's body, but locating it proved incredibly difficult. On the 1st of October 2004, her remains were finally found, what was left of them. Even then, Mark continued to deny involvement. At the preliminary hearing on 29th of October 2004, he pleaded not guilty. The case proceeded to trial. Laurie's family begged him to admit the truth and spare them further suffering, but Mark remained defiant. Eventually, on the 15th of April 2005, he changed his plea and admitted to killing his wife. Initially, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, a decision based on the law at the time. However, in July 2005, the State Parole Board announced that they would not consider Mark Hacking for early release until at least 2035. It was, in effect, a way to work around the limitations of the existing system. As a result of the case, Laurie's law was introduced, increasing the minimum sentence for first-degree murder to 15 years before parole eligibility. Mark Hacking will spend at least 30 years in prison for the murder of his wife before the State Parole Board even considers a possible release date. Mark Hacking's family released the following statement, which was read by Douglas Hacking, Mark Hacking's father, at a press conference in Salt Lake City. It is difficult to talk about our son, Mark Hacking, without sounding like we are making excuses for his involvement in the senseless and tragic death of our daughter-in-law Lori on the night of July 18, 2004. We are doing so to clear up some misconceptions about this case and to provide a clearer understanding of what occurred and why. As has already been reported by the media, in 1996, Mark was sent home from an LDS mission for failing to live up to the high standards expected from the missionaries called to represent the church. He was also having some health problems and returned ashamed and in spiritual, emotional, and physical pain. Within a few weeks, Mark suffered a series of additional health problems that resulted in 3 surgeries. The most serious of these issues was a concussion, seizure, and broken back from falling off the roof of a house. Following months of incapacitating back pain, Mark tried to go back to college, but found it almost impossible to sit in class for long due to the pain and resulting inability to concentrate. His ability to sit improved over the years, but his inability to concentrate or learn continued to hinder him. Although we were unaware of Mark's learning disability, we have recently come to know how agonizing it was for him to fail one class after another to the point that he could no longer attend college. These failures were terribly hard on his self-esteem and created constant anxiety for him. Rather than admit to himself and others that he could not succeed in college, he began to create the illusion that he was going to school and doing well. He pretended to graduate from the University of Utah and carried his deception to the point of actually visiting several medical schools to interview. We now know that he lied about graduating from college and applying to medical schools. Mark told everyone that he had been accepted to 4 schools and deliberated which to attend. Last summer, Mark and Lori traveled to North Carolina to look for a place to live and signed a rental agreement. They then quit their jobs in Utah and packed to move. Mark sensed that the house of cards he had been building for years was beginning to sway, and he became even more anxious. Lori found out that he had never applied to any medical schools, and Mark finally admitted everything to her on the night of July 18, 2004. As you can imagine, Lori was deeply hurt. To clear up some misconceptions about Mark's confession, it was reported Mark's brothers, Lance and Scott, were the ones who told authorities Mark had killed Lori. The reality is that on July 24th, Lance confronted Mark with the evidence police had gathered and urged him to reveal where Lori's body was. He and Scott met with Mark that evening, at which time Mark confessed everything to them. His attorney was notified and instructed by Mark to provide information regarding Lori's whereabouts to the district attorney, an act which took place the following day. From that point on, it was never a matter of whether Mark would plead guilty, but when he would do it based on the processes of the legal system. Mark resolved in August that he would never let his case be tried and informed his attorney of that decision. As for Mark's character, until this chain of events, he had never been in trouble with the law, nor did he ever develop bad habits such as the use of illegal drugs. Mark always had good friends. He has always been an obedient, hard-working and thoughtful individual who treated us with respect. More than anything, we know that Mark loved Lori. We never heard them argue. We never heard him say a negative word about her. When they were not working, they were inseparable. Mark suffers continually for his choices. Anyone who could have shared in our conversations with him or read his letters and life history would know the depth of his sorrow and remorse for having taken the life of the one person he cherished most and for having caused pain to so many others, especially Lori's family. Mark was close to Thelma and has expressed particular concern for her suffering in almost every letter and conversation we have had with him. We are not sure any of us will ever understand why Mark did what he did, nor are we sure he will ever fully understand it either. What we are sure about is that he is willing to pay any price for what he has done. He has a desire to continue to serve others, but realizes his opportunities to do so in prison will be limited. As a family, We hope that someday he can be released from prison so that he can be in a better position to contribute to the lives of others. As for when Mark should be released, we will leave that up to the parole board as they consider how he conducts his life while incarcerated. And for the eternal consequences of his actions, we will leave that to the Saviour, who will judge him with perfect justice, but also perfect mercy, having a full knowledge of the state of his mind at the time he ended Laurie's life. Our family continues to feel deep sorrow and regret for Thelma, Eraldo, Paul, and Laurie's other family members and friends for the emptiness that has filled their lives since losing Laurie. As parents, we wish we could have prevented this tragic event. We also loved her and will continue to miss her presence in our lives as well. Although we abhor what Mark did, we are proud of him for taking responsibility for his actions and for his desire to repent. As hard as it may seem to believe, we love him more now than before. We wish to express a final thanks to our own family, friends, neighbours, and community members that have extended unconditional, Christ-like love to our family during this devastating time. Thank you also to Mr. Gilathe for his help and professionalism in providing services to Mark. We are grateful that the media has respected our wishes for privacy over the past year. This will be our final statement to the press, as we request that we be permitted to move on with our lives. Finally, in the hope that someone else might learn from Mark's mistakes, permit us to quote Mark, "I know prison is where I need to be. I will spend my time there doing all I can to right the many wrongs I have done, though I realize complete atonement is impossible in this life. I have a lot of healing and changing to do, but I hope that someday I can become the man Laurie always thought I was. To the many people I have hurt, I am more sorry than you could ever know. Every day my soul burns in torment when I think of what you must be going through. I wish I could take away your pain. I wish I could take back all the lies I have told and replace them with the truth. I wish I could put Laurie back into your arms. My pain is deserved, yours is not. From the bottom of my heart I beg for your forgiveness. There is no such thing as a harmless lie, no matter how small it is. You may think a lie only hurts the liar, but this is far from the truth. If you are traveling a path of lies, please stop now and face the consequences. Whatever those consequences, they will be better than the pain you are causing yourself and others." Family removed the name Hacking from Laurie's headstone. "We just felt that Mark obviously didn't want her anymore," said her mother. Laurie's married name was replaced with the Portuguese word filhinha, which translates to little daughter. Laurie Hacking's death shattered not only her family, but an entire community that had once seen her marriage as picture perfect. Behind closed doors, she had been living with a man who built his life on lies, and when the truth began to unravel, she paid the ultimate price. Her story is a tragic reminder that the most dangerous secrets are often kept by those we trust the most. Laurie was just 27 years old when her life was cut short. She was remembered as kind-hearted, intelligent, and full of hope for the future. A devoted daughter, loving wife, and soon-to-be mother. Her light touched many. Though her life was stolen far too soon, her memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew and loved her. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.